From surviving to resonance, what radical attunement looks like. What if survival isn't the destination, but simply the doorway? I am Tracy Gantlin-Monroy, and in this episode of Beyond the Spot, we explore what happens when your nervous system finally feels seen. We'll talk about how trauma shapes how we connect, how brain spotting supports that sacred return to the body, and why resonance, especially for Black, Brown, and marginalized bodies, is a revolutionary act. This isn't just about co regulation, it's about being met deeply and honestly. Because when you've spent your life surviving, resonance isn't just healing, it's liberation. Beyond the Spot, Decolonizing Healing One Brain at a Time, is a podcast that weaves, my first love, of course, brain spotting, and somatic informed modalities with embodied healing, cultural consciousness, and real talk about trauma, resilience, and recovery. Hosted by Tracy Gantlin-Monroy, a licensed professional counselor, spiritual healer, and the first Black female brain spotting trainer in the world. Each episode dares to dismantle mental health myths, uplift lived experiences, and restore collective wisdom. One conversation at a time. Beyond the Spot podcast is for educational purposes and is not therapy. Please reach out to licensed medical and mental health professionals. Thank you. Welcome to Beyond the Spot. I am your host, Tracy Gantlin-Monroy, licensed professional counselor, brain spotting trainer, and somatic practitioner. Today, we're talking about something many of us haven't been taught to expect from our relationships or even from therapy. We're diving into something many of us never had language for, let alone permission to feel. Resonance. Resonance is what we're talking about today. But let me be clear, survival is powerful, but it's not the end goal. Survival is what the nervous system does when it's not sure what's coming next. As I speak about survival, I'm coming from the survival mechanisms that are designed to keep us safe. I'm talking about flight, freeze, fawn, fight. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Because understand, survival is sacred, but it's not the destination. It's the starting point. Resonance is what the nervous system does when it finally feels seen. Let me say this for all the clarity in the world. Survival is not the problem. There is a sacred intelligence of survival. When I say survival, I'm not speaking in metaphor. I'm talking about hypervigilance. And for many persons of color, especially Black folks, given our history, hypervigilance, numbing, performing peace while holding rage. I'm talking about the brilliance of the nervous system doing whatever it had to do to stay here. Survival isn't a failure. It is a sacred strategy. And I want us to really get that. But many of us stay stuck there. We become fluent in scanning, controlling, contorting, all the things, and literally disconnected from what it means to rest in the presence of another. Survival is the shutdown that kept you from saying too much. The people pleasing that kept you protected. That's that fawning. FAWNING. It's the silence that kept you safe. Your nervous system is not broken. It's actually brilliant. Survival is not dysfunction. It's strategy. It's design. It's what your body did to stay here, literally. But too often, we treat survival as pathology instead of wisdom, especially in communities of color. I'm talking about Black, brown, indigenous, and marginalized bodies, where what gets labeled as dysregulation is often just a sign of long-standing harm. Yeah. And if I might, I find it not robbery to make it very clear, factually, that when I speak about survival, I'm not speaking theory. I am simply speaking lineage. So with that, yeah, I'm going to call the roll to the Black folks who learned to quiet rage in boardrooms, who were told their grief was too loud, their joy too much, and their brilliance always a threat. How about those same Black folks policed for how they grieve, move, and shine? Your nervous system was never the problem. Your survival is sacred. When you hear this ideal and what's roaming around now, where people outside of community have the audacity to say, I'm getting a little tired of this Black fatigue, pay that no mind. If you are Black identifying and you don't have some level of fatigue in that Black skin that you are in, that probably would make me a bit curious, because historically, when we look at the ideological constructs of the USA, there's a history that goes along with this melanated skin for anyone who identifies as American Black, African American, and the beat goes on. Whatever it is, Black fatigue is real. And it happens in communities where people are subjected to microaggressions, macro assaults, oppression, unfair treatment, and all the things as a result of who they are, the community they belong to. To the Latinx communities who translated the world for their parents by age 7, who carried the language, the labor, and the legacy in one breath. Your nervous system deserves rest. Your resilience is real. To indigenous people whose land was taken and whose ceremonies were outlawed and hidden to stay alive, who held spirit in silence so it would survive. You are medicine. Your wisdom is in your breath. To Asian Americans in Pacific Islander communities who bore the burden of being invisible and exceptional, often referenced as the model minority, who were taught to be silent and strong, to shrink for safety and succeed for protection. Your story matters in full color. You are allowed to be soft. To the Arab and Middle Eastern communities profiled and dismissed, cast as threats before being seen as people, who learn to self-regulate in every airport, every classroom. Your dignity is not up for negotiation. Regulation is reclamation. To South Asian survivors who carry caste and colonization in the same breath, who know the weight of silence and the cost of compliance. Your body is not too much. You don't have to shrink. To Jewish communities carrying trauma through pogroms, ghettos, and genocide, your survival matters. Your dignity is non-negotiable. Period. To queers, trans, disabled, and neurodivergent communities and folks across all of these communities whose survival required shape-shifting, vigilance, and prayer. You have always been whole. Your nervous system speaks wisdom. To white-bodied co-conspirators who chose discomfort over dominance, you're not just allies, you're part of the shift, and I acknowledge you right here, right now. Survival didn't mean we failed. It meant we adapted. But now, we get to choose resonance. We get to name our nervous systems as sacred, not suspicious. Survival was strategy. Resonance is inheritance. Some of you may ask, what is this resonance really that Tracy is talking about today? Just to kind of shrink the frame a little bit with an operational context as I'm speaking about resonance. Resonance is when your nervous system recognizes safety, not because you declared it, but because it feels it in your presence. Resonance is when your nervous system doesn't have to perform. It's being safe enough to stay. It's not declared, it's felt. It's like breathing deeply or your breath deepening without effort. Your muscles softening without permission. It's when someone else's presence says, you're safe to land. It's tone, tempo, eye contact, or not, regulation, spaciousness. Resonance is co-regulation, but deeper. It's relational honesty. It happens when your pain doesn't have to shrink in someone else's presence. Resonance is when your body recognizes another body that won't require it to shrink. Resonance can't be rushed. It has to be built over time, in and through relationship. One of the major things with brain spotting is that we track that. We're not chasing a diagnosis. We follow the body's whisper. And be clear, the spot is not the goal. It's simply an access point. And even when we talk about this thing of resonance, it's not necessarily the norm and can actually feel foreign and not uncommon for resonance to become radical for persons of color and marginalized persons, because our bodies truly do keep the score. So I want to talk about when resonance feels foreign and why this is so radical for marginalized communities, marginalized bodies. The fact of the matter is, many of us marginalized folks weren't raised in spaces that we've been met with resonance. It's not uncommon for us to sense and have the awareness that we experience scrutiny. We haven't experienced, weren't reared in those spaces where resonance was modeled. It's not uncommon for our parents to do fair parenting. And on the other side of that, guilt parenting. We were taught to please, perform, and predict. And be clear, this is all out of safety. Resonance isn't just new, it's foreign. And often it feels unsafe at first. If you've never been met with presence in your experience, being seen can feel like a threat. It can be read in the system as exposure. Be mindful that the brain is a prediction generator. But also with that, we know that the brain also has prediction errors. And I'm not judging it as good or bad. I am just speaking from a neurobiological perspective. And so be mindful that when someone, especially if you're a clinician working with clients and patients, when you're working with someone and you're providing that space and that resonance, clients may pull back. They may even go silent, and they can even question whether they deserve it. That's not resistance. That's recalibration. That's simply the nervous system testing what's real. So when clients start to feel resonance, they may indeed pull back, go quiet. And let me just say this again for the people in the back of the room. That's not resistance. It's the nervous system recalibration. Yes, what looks like shutdown may actually be recalibration. And that's important to say. Clients may freeze, fawn, or even question whether they deserve the attunement. That, again, is not resistance. It's the nervous system testing what's real. And be clear, survival gets the job done, but it keeps the heart closed. When a client tells you they're fine, but their body is bracing. Now, if your client is simply bracing, what are you listening to? Them saying they're fine verbally, or actually that bracing that you notice that the client is doing? I'm going to go for the bracing every time. Just saying. when we talk about somatic, when we talk about brain and body. Yeah, because that fine is coming from the neocortical thinking brain, while that literal bracing that you're noticing is coming from the feeling brain. That becomes physiology. That is somatic. Notice that. Resonance is a portal. And for BIPOC, Black, Indigenous persons of color, bodies, it's revolutionary. And I want to say this to my colleagues. I want to shout out to clinicians, healers, helping professionals. And I'm curious about something. And I want to bring something to your attention. Are you regulated enough to be felt? Because the fact of the matter is, radical attunement is a practice. And be clear, for any of us that identify as a mental health clinician, healing professional, helping professional, attunement is not optional. It is actually reparative. Okay? So, with that, let me say this. Attunement is not a vibe, y'all. It's a responsibility. And it's not about perfect stillness. It's about presence, human to human, especially in our role as healers, clinicians, helping professionals. And I'll go right here with it in all transparency. As a brain spotting trainer, I get all sorts of questions, especially during the training after the neuro experiential demos. We always have a participant that volunteers of the people that are attending the training. Brain spotting trainings are 3 days generally. And for every frame setup we demonstrate or teach you, we demonstrate it with someone who's attending the training live, in person, in color. And I often say that healing is an internal process. It is the brain and body that does the work of healing. Healing is spiritual, not religious, because you don't have to be religious to be spiritual. And every time I make that assertion, I give that distinction. Let's be clear. Healing is spiritual. There are atheists who are spiritual. Look it up. And healing requires an anchor, a resource. That's anywhere the client or patient gets strength. Our clients do not need to be fixed. They need to be felt. They need to be held. So, I am unafraid to demonstrate staying present while the client system opens up, and happy to ask as well as answer questions. And I'm always curious, can you be with what you don't understand? Because that actually lends itself to brain spotting orientation and the uncertainty principle. The uncertainty principle in brain spotting transports the dual attunement frame. And in layman's terms, that really translates to radical attunement. And that is actually what transforms a session into a sacred place. Just telling you what I know, what I've experienced, and what I've studied. And the thing about radical attunement is it requires the therapist to bring their regulated self into the space, not just their credentials. I'm talking about noticing that limbic system we carry, and be clear, limbic countertransference, which is inevitable. It is ubiquitous, and it will happen in every session you sit down with the client or patient. I don't care what modality you're using. Radical attunement, yeah, it does require a level of self-regulation. It's also, as a clinician, it's noticing the tone, the breath, the tension shifts as you're working with the client or patient. And I'll even add to that, cultural attunement is required for radical attunement. When I talk about cultural attunement, I'm coming from the place of the nervous system flexibility and relational humility. These are not extras, they're core skills. How about sometimes it's naming whiteness in the room when necessary? You cannot offer resonance if you're armored with neutrality. There ain't nothing personal about neutrality. Be clear, survival is sacred. Resonance is sovereignty. Brainspotting has a beautiful way that it meets you where language gave up. Brainspotting meets us with stuff we can't even know by virtue of its design and how we believe it works. Healing doesn't happen in performance. It happens in presence. Attunement isn't what you read. It's actually what you embody. I'm just saying. And please understand, therapy is not just about treatment plans. Again, it's about presence. We cannot get away from this idea of presence. Our industry, our profession is primed for a shift, and a massive one at that. Also, be clear, brainspotting is so far beyond a technique. It isn't just an eye position. It's access. It's the place where the body says, I'll hold this until someone can hold it with me. When that trauma capsule opens up for reprocessing, that can be overwhelming and a lot for any individual who has experienced trauma, whether it was in utero trauma, preverbal trauma, personal trauma, developmental trauma, existential trauma, and the beat goes on. And when we talk about holding with another human being, if you're going to hold with another human being, I would recommend strongly that if you're going to be that someone, it has to be regulated. You got to be present. You got to be attuned. I truly believe we can only support healing as much as we ourselves have healed. Just my thoughts. Haven't done a study on it, but I've had a gang of experience of clients and patients who have sought me out, who have been unsuccessful in other spaces with other clinicians. We all deserve healing despite our status, our profession, our gender, our sex, and all the things. We are all humans. I am just extending an invitation to divorce these elitist ideologies, to truly lean into radical attunement, to meet the needs for ourselves and our clients. Because this is not an either or deal. This is and both. And so every practitioner, along with our clients, have a birthright. according to our humanity, to have access to healing. So this is not either or. But I do have some curiosities that I'd like to put out there for your reflection. And always know, in any episode that I give a reflection prompt or I invite engagement, please reach out to me, whether by my social media, my website, email, because I want to hear what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and what you have to say. Some of the curiosities today for me around this episode is, what would it look like to allow your nervous system to receive and not just scan? How about, when did survival become your primary language that you lead with? What does resonance feel like in your body? And if you've ever felt it, what's one place in your body still waiting for resonance? What parts of you have never been met with compassion, softness, or co-regulation? Just curious. And how would your nervous system move if it didn't need to brace? What would that feel like with the piece of furniture or the chair holding you versus you with your tenseness holding it? In lies the difference. Survival brought you here. Survival is sacred, but you deserve more. You deserve resonance, where your system doesn't have to work to be understood. Survival was brilliant. Let me say that for the record. And it still is, because it keeps us safe. It's kept our ancestors safe for centuries. But resonance is your birthright. I know you hear me talk about brain spotting all the time, but there's a reason for that. I came into brain spotting community simply seeking a tool and modality to serve the community. The fact of the matter is, brain spotting also heals the healer. I received a healing from brain spotting in a training. So I am no one's walking billboard, but I got to tell you, there's nothing like witnessing a felt sense and knowing that you received a healing. And I can't tell you how many times over and over again I have witnessed healing while using brain spotting. It's facts, okay? And so with that, I'm saying what I'm saying, okay? Just know we all deserve every one of our systems. We deserve not to have to work so hard to be understood. Survival was brilliant. And I'm going to say it again. Resonance is your birthright. And brain spotting truly does offer a path back to self. It is a practice for returning to that space, not by fixing, but by feeling. One spot, one breath, one embodied moment at a time. This is Beyond the Spot. I am Tracy Gantlin-Monroy, licensed professional counselor. And I absolutely see you, not just as surviving, but as sacred, whole, and ready to be met. I honor your resonance. If today's episode resonated with your nervous system or your spirit, share it with someone who's still unlearning and reach out to me. My website is gracecommunitycounseling.com. You can reach me on Instagram at Monroy LPC. That is MONROY LPC. Also, I have offerings from retreats to brainspotting trainings to workshops, you name it. And I am also a speaker. So if you ever need a speaker with my skill set, look me up. Give me a call. Let's see what can happen. And absolutely for you clinicians and adjacent body healers, feel free to reach out and attend a brain spotting training. We have trainings all the time. Thank you.